Thank you so much for joining us for our second annual Impact Celebration. We're excited to have you all tonight. So good to see so many wonderful faces, faces I recognize, faces I don't. It's great. My name is Susie Tierney, and I'm the director of Just Faith Ministries. And I'd love to know who else is with us tonight. So let's take about 30 seconds to introduce ourselves to each other, if you wouldn't mind. Putting your name and where you're from or where you're sitting this evening in the chat. And we'll introduce ourselves to each other if you feel so moved. That'd be great. Jack and Maggie, LA, yay. Meg, good to see you, Meg. Kristen. Kim, oh, it's gonna start going too fast. St. Louis, yay, St. Louis. Yeah, fantastic. Wonderful, wonderful. North Carolina, Louisiana. Yes, we'll span the globe tonight. I love it. Well, folks, as you're introducing yourselves to each other, let me just begin where we always begin with all of our Just Faith Ministries programs and opportunities, and that's with prayer. And because we're celebrating our Mary and Gary Becker Award nominees this evening, and because we are officially in the season of creation, I would like to share a poem as our opening prayer from one of my favorite environmental teachers, Mary Oliver. And this poem is called Don't Hesitate. If you suddenly and unexpectedly feel joy, don't hesitate, give in to it. There are plenty of lives and whole towns destroyed or about to be. We are not wise and not very often kind, and much can never be redeemed. Still, life has some possibility left. Perhaps this is its way of fighting back. That sometimes something happens better than all the riches or power in the world. It could be anything, but very likely you notice it in an instant when love begins. Anyway, that's often the case. Anyway, whatever it is, don't be afraid of its plenty. Joy is not made to be a crumb. Amen. And so again, for those of you that are with us, welcome. We're grateful to have you here. We have an exciting evening planned. As I said, tonight we're going to be honoring our 3 Mary and Gary Becker Award nominees. I'm going to be sharing some updates that you'll definitely want to hear, including something that I'm going to vocalize for the first time tonight. So you are first time hearers of this new thing. And then we're going to round off our evening with a couple of Just Faith graduates who are going to share about their experience and a closing, their experience with Just Faith Ministries and their connection with us. And then we're going to close out our evening with our founder, Jack Jezreel. So a full evening indeed. But first, before we get to any of these wonderful presentations, it is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, who will be kicking us off the evening in a way that only he can. Dr. Lewis Brogdon is Associate Professor of Preaching and Black Church Studies at the Baptist Seminary of Kentucky. He has over 30 years of ministry experience and over 16 years in higher education. He has taught at Simmons College of Kentucky, Bluefield University, Claflin University, and Louisville Seminary. Dr. Brogdon has not only been a leading voice on racial justice, but he has also challenged people across the country to civility in politics. And because of his exceptional work, some of you may not even know, but we know that he was recently invited to be part of a United Nations initiative called the Permanent Forum for People of African Descent. And of course, Dr. Brogdon provided some of the content for and was one of our consultants and is still our consultant on our racial justice program series and other things that we do as related to anti-racism work. But in the midst of his impressive bio, what we at Just Faith Ministries love most about Dr. Brogdon is that he is just a stellar human being with a big smile, a big laugh, and a big heart. And so please join me in welcoming Dr. Brogdon this evening.
Hello, my friends, my sisters and brothers in Just Faith Ministries. Susie, thank you for such a gracious invitation. It is always a joy to be able to partner with you in the stellar work that you do across this country, in taking up the important work of educational advocacy. So I see some familiar faces on here, and I am just honored to be a part of this special evening and delighted to share a message that God has impressed upon my spirit and my mind. I've been working on this all summer. Susie's getting the bill. And so I'm gonna hit the ground running and stick with my allocated time. I want to talk to you about the weary work of ministry and advocacy in an age of social chaos and change. And I just want you to take a few seconds and sit with the images there, because those images may symbolize some moments that you have had over the course of the past few days, weeks, months, maybe over the course of the past few years. I've had those moments where I've just had to kind of sit with all that is swirling around us. And so it is from there that I want to just share some things, beginning, of course, with wisdom from Scripture. Listen to the word of God. So let us not grow weary in doing what is right, for we will reap at harvest time if we do not give up. So then, whenever we have an opportunity, listen to those words, whenever. Let us work for the good of all, and especially for those of the family of faith. This letter has two storylines. The first storyline is, of course, the sort of, we're in the first century context. There's this whole issue as the first Christians are working through their understanding of what you do with Torah and circumcision and its relationship to Christ. And so the letter to Galatia is addressing that. But there is this second storyline about just sort of our human tendency to lapse into bondages that Christ has freed us from. So you see, if you were to give this letter to the Galatians a careful read, you will see that there are two temptations and dangers. There's this tendency to just go back to what is familiar. So you find communities often struggling to live into something bigger, something more inclusive, something that is broader, something that they're not necessarily accustomed to. And then there's also this giving up or letting go of doing good work or God's work. And I think this is a sort of apropos text to begin with on tonight, because we're seeing some of this playing out in communities and all across this country, whether it's the language of making America great again. There is just this general cultural push to go back to what is familiar. And there are more and more people less committed to doing good than ever before. When I often preach this text, I like to tag it in two particular ways. The first way I tag it is by saying, hey, the text says, and using the King James language, be not weary in well doing. So I like to talk with people about doing good gets old, I mean, sometimes you just get tired of taking the high road, doing the right thing when, you don't have a lot of company. I love this one quote from a New Testament scholar that commented on human nature, that we lack staying power and how easily discouraged we can be, especially when the results aren't quite kind of working out the way that we had hoped. And sometimes when we aren't getting the results that we want, sometimes that's more of a reflection of our motivations. And we have to sometimes stop and ask ourselves why we're doing the work in the first place. Are we doing it so that we can fix things and get all the credit, or are we really committed to the work because it is right and it is true, irregardless of the results, irregardless of whether we are getting credit, if it is benefiting us personally? So sometimes these difficult situations show us a lot about ourselves. So yes, doing good gets old, but doing good makes a difference. So I love to get to this part in my sermon, and I don't have enough time to preach it like I would if I was in a Black church. Oh, but doing good makes a difference. I grew up in a church where they always talked about, oh, you're going to reap what you sow. And the import is always, if you do something bad, God's going to get you. But the text says you reap what you sow, whatever you sow. So if you do good, you're going to reap good. And so doing good makes a difference. And there's a dual horizon in this text. There is both time, but there's also an eschatological horizon in the text when it uses the language of in due season. So the signs of weariness, they abound. Whether people just need time to get away, tears, people are just, a lot is happening. And I'm sure that there are people who are on the call tonight that you may resonate with some of these graphics, whether it's shedding tears, sitting alone, trying to figure out what is going on. Not am I losing it, but are we losing it? Is the world literally losing its mind? It's almost as if 2020, all this just hit the fan, whether it's, of course, COVID, protests over the deaths of Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd. I mean, the country just erupted. And then we thought, hey, we survived 2020. We got all the crazy behind us. And then you have the attack on the Capitol building and just a complete explosion of white Christian nationalism and religious extremism, which is only gaining momentum and steam. There are discouraging signs in the fight for the soul of our nation. I wrote an op-ed last year about the fight for the soul of America, that we are very much in a real fight for this country to be its best self. Not perfect, but true to who we aspire to be. And there are just discouraging signs that are causing some to question whether they should keep fighting, keep struggling. They look and, Roe v. Wade has been overturned. There was almost a year and a half of many white Americans listening to African Americans talk about how racism impacts their lives. And they said, hey, what can we do? And as soon as we give one structural recommendation, let's change the way we teach history. Oh, no, we can't do that. And you get the whole pushback and the caricature of critical race theory, that has been discouraging to a lot of African Americans. We were like, man, I thought y'all were listening. I thought you said, what can we do? And as soon as we give you one recommendation, it gets smacked down. We can't have principled and civil disagreements about politics. We have exchanged that for socio-political tribalism, where hate others who are of a different political party. I mean, we're really descending into political violence. The attack on voting rights is just disenfranchising more and more African Americans. And we're even seeing we can't even reopen our economy, because not only do we have a disenchanted electorate, we have a disenchanted workforce. But looking deeper, you find that there is this undercurrent of nihilism that's fueling the extremism, that people are afraid, they feel isolated, they're having a hard time making sense of their world, and so they're latching on to things. And I'm currently working on a writing project that's talking about nihilism in white America. So in a sense, America is both in crisis, but I think we're also at a crossroads. And of course, I'm a scholar of Dr. King, and so I like to frame historical moments in a moral way. And so America is in a fight for its soul. We're at a crossroad. We can continue to go down a chaotic, destructive path, or we can go down a path that leads to a better America. That's why anytime Susie and my friends at Just Faith Ministries call me, I answer, because we're in this work together, trying to lead this country down a better path, learning how to listen to each other, how to talk to each other, how to understand each other. And so I developed this graphic. I'm not a great graphic guy, but I got somebody to help me with this, because I needed some kind of way to frame how some of you feel tonight. And you're kind of in the same quandary that I live with. I want to invite you into the world I live in, the world that I struggle with, because what we're trying to do, we're trying to hold on to good, trying to nurture good. You hold on to good individually, you try to nurture good in the world around you, and to be grateful for things that are good. But man, it's hard, because you're surrounded by suffering and injustice. You're surrounded by people who are living in the streets, people who don't have the basic necessities of life. And so we're busy. We're busy working to make the world a better place. Well, we can't fix it, but man, are we at work trying to make it better. Daily, we realize the work is too big for us, no matter how much we do. Doesn't seem like things get better. And so we struggle. We want to keep working, and we're trying not to let the fact that we're not making the progress we had hoped, we're trying to not let that overwhelm us. And this is somebody here tonight, sitting there kind of trying to make sense of all of that, trying not to get overwhelmed by this. So in the last few moments of my presentation, I want to share some things that I hope will provide some wisdom, some strength, and some encouragement. And the first thing I want to encourage you to do, you need to ground yourself in God, in Christ. You need to be grounded in a community of faith. Pay attention to what you're standing on. To use an old story Jesus used in Matthew chapter 7, he was talking about if you build your house on the sand, when the storms come, your house is going to collapse. But if you build your house on something that's solid, it will withstand the storms. And some of the reasons people sort of house their whole approach to ministry and advocacy is collapsing is because of what it has been built on. And I think this is a moment for us to kind of revisit some of those things, because do this work is almost in a real sense. If you're doing ministry and advocacy, if you're trying to work for the common and the greater good, you're trying to work for a world where all God's people can thrive. It's prophetic work, and we often use the language of the prophetic in doing social justice work. And this is an image of Elijah standing in the cave. Very, very powerful story in the Old Testament. And I often use this slide in my Life and Theology of Dr. King course. There's something very, very tragic about what it means to be a prophet. That you're persecuted, prophets suffer. Sometimes they're killed. Most of the time, everything they're saying pretty much gets ignored. And so this sort of tragic dimension of what it means to be prophetic is very much a part of the angst and the frustration and the disappointment that many of us have to grapple with. So I just love the story of Elijah in the cave telling God, I've had enough, I'm done. And that's probably like some of you. Put a fork in me, I'm done trying to be good. I'm done with church and faith and justice. You have those moments where you're just like, I'm done. Now, whether you want to say like Elijah was like, I want to die, but I hope, that you don't say that. But we've had those moments where we're done. And God comes to Elijah and he asks him a question. What are you doing here? I don't have time. I can preach that. So in a Bearings letter that I use for Just Faith Ministries in the past, I talked about my struggle. And I want to encourage you to look at this, to look it up, or to contact Susie, bug her, and try to get a copy of this letter, because I talk about my struggle. How do you balance this? Well, I say this: in a world with so much need, particularly the needs that are the product of centuries of oppression, there's the constant temptation to overextend myself. When I think of times I have compromised or betrayed my integrity, I can see how I was trying to do too much. My greatest struggle is serving with healthy boundaries. And it took me close to a decade to learn how to do this. So let's go back to the scripture. And I want you to pay attention to the word I put in bold. Paul says, let us not grow weary, for we. And when I go back to the Bearings letter, I talk about the importance of realizing I am not in this fight and in this struggle alone. Friends, we are in this together. So realizing we're in this together, pay attention to what is guiding and motivating your work. King did this. He made sure that he was disciplined, rooted, principled in what he was doing. There was extremism on every hand in the 50s and 60s. King was a man of principle, and he struggled, and he did it within a Christian framework because it was important to him. Also, I want to encourage you to have a broader vision and effective models for ministry and advocacy work. This is why the programs Just Faith Ministries offer are so important. I develop similar models in workshops I do, whether it's teaching people how to have a balanced approach in their preaching, or how to take up public advocacy work that moves us from moral imagination to moral courage to moral intelligence. And it also entails learning how to see certain things from our tradition, to see them through new eyes. And so I'm sure you have heard of the Serenity Prayer, and I'm going to end my time with the Serenity Prayer, but I'm going to do something that we often do in the Black community. We talk about when we appropriate something from the majority community, we dip it in chocolate, okay? Or to use a hip hop term, we remix it. And so, because there's certain things in the Serenity Prayer that reflect a sort of white Christian framework of accepting things you can't change, that make it a little untenable for people in minority contexts. So you have to kind of dip this prayer in a little chocolate. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to read this prayer as we conclude our time. God, grant us the serenity to accept that we cannot eliminate injustice and suffering in the world, but the courage to stand against them, the wisdom to forge a better tomorrow than the limitations of today. Loving God, teach us to live one day at a time, to enjoy moments of joy and goodness as they come, and to accept hardships, setbacks, and days when progress seems impossible, as the inevitable product of ministry and advocacy in a fallen world. God of wisdom, help us to take, as those who walk this walk and fought this fight before us, this sinful country as it is, while working to make it what it should be, trusting that eventually you will make things right as we participate in and surrender to your will, that we may be reasonably happy in this life, supremely happy with you in the company of all heaven in the next. Amen. I want you to be encouraged as you fight for justice in your family spaces, in your communities, in your churches, and in the public square. We can make a difference together. Thank you.
Well, Dr. Brogdon, thank you. I have gotten accustomed to being wowed by you, and tonight was no exception. We are both graced and encouraged by your words, so thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jack Jezreel, and I'm so glad you could join us. The occasion for our gathering this evening is simply to pay homage to the creativity, energy, and passion of those who do justice. And while we will honor 3 organizations whose work we believe to be distinctive, we are but 3 examples of a beehive of activity dedicated to the dream of a world of joy, of solidarity, of justice, of all belonging. The dream embedded in the gospel is our North Star, and it is a dream worth proclaiming and celebrating, so we are. The Mary and Gary Becker Social Justice Award was initiated last year in honor of the remarkable witness of the lives of Mary and Gary, and in thanksgiving for the impossible to exaggerate role they played in the birth and growth of Just Faith Ministries. I call them the godparents of Just Faith for their role in getting the organization started, for their leadership on the board, local organizing, donors, wisdom figures. I cannot overstate the impact of their lives on the world. And if you've been changed by a Just Faith Ministries program, then Mary and Gary have had an impact on you. As many of you know, Mary's partner in love and justice, Gary, passed away in 2018. It's still hard for me to accept that I'm not going to see Gary bound into a board meeting at any given moment. So large was his presence and so vivid is his memory. But happily, Mary is with us tonight, committed, passionate, and resolute about the work of justice. She continues to play an important role in the work of justice and the life of Just Faith Ministries. Mary has served on the board and executive committee of Just Faith Ministries. She's actively engaged in the social justice work of the Catholic Church of the Beatitudes and the Immaculate Heart community in her area, both of which have used Just Faith Ministries programs. She's a member of the Santa Barbara Impact Network, an organization that has worked for the last 10 years to provide housing for the homeless people in Santa Barbara. She's part of the Community Environmental Council, focused on taking bold climate action to put the region and the state of California on track for an equitable, climate-safe future. And finally, she continues to be present for a monthly vigil at the gates of Vandenberg Space Base in the name of nonviolence. Mary, it is so good to have you with us again this year, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jack, for that introduction, and thank you, Dr. Brogdon. Those words of encouragement I needed to hear, so they were most welcome. Thank you so much for being with us. So, of course, I consulted Siri when about what to say for the Just Faith Impact Network celebration and asked her to define the word impact. Here are some of the meanings that popped up. Impact is a collision. It happens when objects strike each other. Also, impact happens when objects are pressed together. Another meaning of impact is to have a major effect, a significant influence on something. So how those definitions fit Just Faith, I'd like to talk about a little bit, and here's my experience. For a long time, I yearned to have a major, significant impact on the problems that I could see in the world. Actually, truth be told, I wanted to save the world, but I didn't seem to be making much progress at that. It took the collision, the impact of sitting together with other people for a lot of weeks of hard questions, serious study, dialogue, and prayer to shake loose my frustration and my sense of powerlessness. But with the the pressure and the support of the group, I was able to step out of my bubble of overwhelming concern and discover the power of trusting and working with good, gifted people. So we've come together this evening to lift up some Just Faith inspired projects and to learn how they have significantly impacted their communities and to be inspired by the programs and their stories. And here's what I believe. Standing behind each one of these projects, there are hundreds, there are thousands of Just Faith graduates who are having significant impact in their cities and towns. Since its very beginning, Just Faith the goal of Just Faith has been to take good, middle of the road, sincere people and empower them to actually change the world. It's really wonderful to see that happening, one group, one project, one vision at a time. What a blessing that is. So thank you, Just Faith.
Hi, my name is Amilcar Valencia. I'm a co-founder and executive director at El Refugio, The Refuge. Our organization works alongside immigrants directly impacted by the U.S. immigration detention and deportation system. In 2021, we attended more than 1,300 calls from people detained. We purchased more than 200 plane and bus tickets for those who are released from detention. We made more than 800 commissary deposits. We sent close to 400 books, and we supported 60 families with financial assistance. Thanks to our advocacy work, 14 people have been released from detention in the last few years. I cannot emphasize enough the impact that these have in their lives. They're free from detention and reunited with their loved ones. Just Faith graduates have embraced our work and continue to be an integral part of our refugio. They understand that our work lies beyond charity. The relationship they build with people detained and their loved ones are transformative. Thanks for considering our application. Muchas gracias.
What's the key to being able to move families forward to a secure future and getting basically that generational poverty no more? And housing is it. In our 14 years as a nonprofit, 54 families have achieved first-time homeownership and 53 have been successful over the long term. Phase 1 is financial literacy. A 12-week class prepares families to be knowledgeable and ready for all of the aspects of budgeting and buying a home. Phase 2 is the savings phase. Families are mentored for an 18 to 24-month period as they save the 3.5% needed for homeownership. Phase 3 is the maintenance phase. Families learn to maintain and improve the value of their homes for the first 5 years by meeting quarterly for personalized mentoring services. The My Front Door program is needed now more than ever in Cheyenne, Laramie, and other parts of Wyoming. The challenges are great, but so is the opportunity to do justice and impact generational poverty for working families with children.
My name is Kristen Pitts, and I'm the program director for Bread and Roses. Bread and Roses was founded in 2015 to help transform how our community acquires, cooks, and relates to the food we eat. We embody our mission by sharing 2 key resources: our teaching and demonstration gardens, and by sharing a commercial community kitchen that we rent out to under-resourced food entrepreneurs. We have used these resources to grow produce that is redistributed to our neighbors experiencing food insecurity, provided cooking and nutrition classes to youth and families, and gave skills-building workshops in gardening and food safety. In addition, we have fostered a space that has allowed over 20 food entrepreneurs to establish thriving businesses within Charlottesville. After participating in and co-facilitating Just Faith programs in my hometown of Greenville, South Carolina several years ago, I was inspired by how Just Faith sparked a desire in participants to engage in advocacy and action. I wanted to bring that same ethos to the work I'm doing now.
So it is my great pleasure to just to thank all of you, the winners of that have been chosen by all the Just Faith graduates who participated in this poll. And so we'll start with the third place, and that goes to El Refugio. And I need some assistance. Susie, do we do anything, or do I just go through 3, 2, 1?
Our representatives are on the call. So the representative for El Refugio, feel free to unmute and say hello. If you are able to join us, I believe Kim is with us today, who is a Just Faith Ministries graduate who also serves on the visitation committee. So Kim, feel free to say hi, and then we can move on to the second place.
Hi, I'm Kim. Thank you guys so much for giving us this opportunity to apply and to be a part of this. It's really neat learning about the other organizations as well.
What you're doing is so important. So thank you for being with us, Kim. And the second place is for Bread and Roses and their food project. And is someone here from that group?
Sorry, had to unmute. Barbara Yeager, I chair the steering committee for Bread and Roses. Kristen Pitts was unable to make it tonight, but we're very honored, and Just Faith has been a great program for our church and surrounding churches. So it's a privilege to be here, and I thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. You are doing wonderful work in your community.
Thank you.
And then in first place is My Front Door from Wyoming. And I hope we have someone here from that organization.
Well, thank you, Mary and Jack. It's an honor and a privilege. We have a wonderful staff which works with these families through the financial preparation, through the savings phase, through the initial 5 years of home ownership. We put 150 hours on average into each family, and they're obviously the ones doing the hard work. We thanks to the inspiration of Just Faith, simply have created a model that's highly successful that the families love. So thank you ever so much.
What an incredible blessing and an honor. And thank you, Mary, and everybody at Just Faith. We are quite moved. Thank you.
Mary, thank you. And congratulations to all our finalists this evening. Your work inspires us and brings hope to many. So thank you. And thank you to all those who submitted entries this year. Let me be the first to invite and encourage all those who did not win this evening to consider submitting again next year. We look forward to highlighting and celebrating again the great work being done across the country. So watch for an invitation in your inbox in 2023. And now, as most of you know, Just Faith Ministries is a project that I started rather reluctantly. And in spite of myself, the project grew. And one of the great satisfactions of my life has been to witness its impact on many people's lives. And another of the great satisfactions has been to watch someone else make the project better. Susie Tierney has been nothing but exceptional since becoming executive director in 2018, and we are a much better organization today because of her. So it's my deepest pleasure to welcome our executive director, Susie Tierney, to share some thoughts on the hopes and dreams of Just Faith Ministries going into next year.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you so much. It's a gift to still have you among our staff, Jack. So grateful for you and founding this lovely organization. I'm going to take us a couple of steps back to get us started, but I have certainly some things I want to share this evening. I want to step back and just invite you to think about how you wanted or still want to impact the world without being overwhelmed, of course, Dr. Brogdon's wonderful message, but how you initially envision yourself impacting the world, or what you want to do now. Are you longing for racial justice or world peace or civility? What grabs a hold of you in the morning and just won't let go of you until you lay your head on the pillow at night? After being inspired by one of our programs, our Becker Award recipients this evening gave careful thought to what they were longing to see happen in their communities. And every night, it seems, it would not let them go. And so they began right where they were to make their communities a better place. And tonight's award nominees join hundreds of others among our Just Faith inspired initiatives. And they are impacting not tens, but hundreds of thousands of lives collectively. And so to all the nominees this evening, let me say my heartfelt congratulations to all of you. You truly are making a difference, and we are inspired. And of course, gratitude to you, Mary. You and Gary continue to inspire all of us. And so as we honor these Becker Award nominees and their impact, I'd like to fill you all in on a little secret. Every morning at Just Faith Ministries, we ask ourselves the same questions. How do we impact the world? How do we as an organization matter? And so tonight, I'd like to share how these questions have inspired us this year and how they're laying a foundation for our work in 2022 and beyond. And most importantly, how you all can continue to co-journey with us in this work. And so this year we have dived headfirst into an identity opportunity, as our board member Bob Hunter says. And we've spent this year in a thoughtful and deliberate process of embracing a new mission and vision and core values that better represent who we are today in this particular moment, in this particular time. And the vision we hold before us today is inspiring justice-driven communities who are advancing peace, racial equity, and a sustainable world. No small feat. As we fleshed out this new vision, though, it became clear to us that we also needed a new symbol that would capture all we wanted it to hold. And so this evening, for the first time, at least verbally, you may have seen this throughout the day or throughout this week, but for the first time, verbally and publicly, I would like to share with you our new Just Faith Ministries logo. We believe this new logo more fully encapsulates our core values of love of neighbor, spiritual transformation, racial equity, justice, peacemaking, environmental stewardship, and community building. Leela, would you please show everybody our new look? As you're looking at this new symbol, whether you see a labyrinth or intersecting paths or points of contact or a roadmap or a cross, this new symbol invites you on a journey with us to learn more about yourself and about the people and planet around you. We hope it invites us all into a discernment about how we will personally engage in action and continue to engage in action for a little bit better world. And of course, with this renewed identity, and you can stop sharing now, Leva, thank you. Of course, with this renewed identity comes new opportunities to give life to our mission and vision. And so I'd like to fill you in on some of the things that we've been working on this year. At this very moment, we are working on a completely revised version of our advocacy program. This new advocacy program focuses on addressing the root causes of injustice with love, our new mission statement, in fact. And there is nothing more important than addressing the root causes of injustice today, and nothing more countercultural than addressing them with love. So we're very excited about this program revision and its launch this November. We are in the final stages of developing a new website that will not only allow our church-based audiences to better pull together groups and facilitate program groups, but it will also allow individuals to find and register for one of our programs. And my favorite part of this new website is, in keeping with our values, the new website will offer registration on a sliding fee scale. We've placed Just Faith Ministries local organizers in 3 different cities and 3 local communities, and are working to place 2 more organizers by the end of the year. And these local organizers are cultivating efforts to transform their local communities, and are working and are laying the groundwork, rather, for justice and peace and racial equity and sustainability on the local level. And then we're also currently dipping our toes into the water of reaching a broader spiritual audience, audiences who may have an interest in learning more about racial justice or civil dialogue, but are not sitting in a church on Sunday morning. Now, to be clear, we're not moving away from our Christian audiences. Oh no, in fact, we're actively working to continue expanding our Christian audiences. These new, more broadly spiritual programs are simply a way for us to put out a welcome mat for those who may be spiritual but not religious, unaffiliated with the church or religious organization, or disenfranchised or disheartened by organized religion. And it is precisely because of our Christian identity that we find ourselves compelled to meet the spiritual audiences where they are, because everyone is invited to be a part of our vast community of people changing the world. These are just a few of the things that we've been working on this year, and we'll continue to work on in 2023 and beyond with your support. Our work simply does not happen without all of you. You must know that. I hope you know that. And for those of you who have supported us over this past year, or are currently supporting us in this critically important work, or have been supporting us forever, on behalf of our entire board and staff, and all those people, all those many, many people who are impacted by your generosity, thank you. Your support is deeply appreciated. You are all deeply appreciated. But please know that in this moment, our work together is in some ways just beginning, and may be as important as it ever has been. We're on the downside of a global pandemic, but we are knee-deep in an economic crisis that's affecting individuals all across the world. We're on the eve of an election that should be lifting up our democratic process, and instead it's showing everybody our divisions. High profile, my apologies, I lost my place then. High profile killings of Black and Brown individuals may have gotten our attention over the last couple of years, but racism, as Dr. Brogdon has pointed out, is still alive and well and thriving. And in spite of the many efforts to address global climate change, we have record-breaking temperatures, droughts, fires, floods, and famine across the globe. And so indeed, friends, we do still have much to do, and our work is as important now as it has ever been. But the good news is, I am convinced that our Just Faith community is prepared to meet this moment. We have a staff that is prepared to meet this moment. We have consultants that are prepared to meet this moment. We have a board that is prepared to meet this moment. And we know you all are prepared to meet this moment as well. So here's where I invite you to partner with us, please. If you've not yet supported our work, I invite you to donate today. If you've already supported us this year and have been a faithful supporter, thank you again. We deeply and profoundly appreciate your continued commitment. If you have basic facilitation skills, consider facilitating one of our programs and creating change in your own community, like these folks who were our Becker Award nominees did. And regardless of any other support you may or may not be able to provide, please keep us in your prayers. Those are always welcome and appreciated. All of these things matter, and they matter to us. And so we're glad you're a part of our Just Faith community. And I am excited to meet this moment with you. And in the words of a poem we use in one of our programs, this may be more than a beginning. This could be the moment everything changes. This may be the moment most pregnant with possibilities. This may be the beginning of our shining like the sun. This may be the time we determine our vocation, where we no longer understand what must be done, but we become the work itself. This may be the moment we are birthed into something worth living and dying for. This could be the moment everything changes. Amen, and thank you, and God bless you all. And now, our final words will come from the introduction here of a couple of my favorite people, Ron and Linda Schaefer. Ron and Linda did their first Just Faith program over 15 years ago and have been supporters of Just Faith Ministries ever since. They have facilitated our programs, been engaging spirituality animators, served as local ambassadors. Ron served on our board for 8 very full years and then 2 more years on our finance committee. And other than literally joining our staff, I'm not sure that these two could do more for us than they have done. And so I'm excited to introduce Ron and Linda Schaefer to you, who are going to share with you a little about their vision for a more just and peaceful and equitable world. Ron and Linda, lovely to have you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Susan.
Thank you very much, Susie. You know, from our experience, people are drawn to Just Faith programs for many reasons. In our particular case, it was seeking to learn more about our calling to engage in more volunteer opportunities over 15 years ago. As I suspect, like many of you, our kids were up and gone, and we approached the retirement years. The programs we facilitated and took part in over the subsequent years gave us much, much more than we ever anticipated at the beginning of this journey. As we look back at this point in time, it's not too much of an overstatement to say that the insights, perspectives, and experiences involved in the Just Faith programs have impacted virtually every day of our lives since then. Certainly those days when we have been our truer selves. It has impacted how and when we pray, how we respond to the news, what organizations we get involved with and to what extent, what charities we choose to support, and to what extent. And we suspect those of you on this call feel much the same way.
We have certainly seen this impact on others in the 3 church communities we're most familiar with as we moved our residences since we first did our Just Faith program. In all 3 cases, Just Faith grads are among the leaders in making their churches more oriented towards social justice and helping those who live on the margins. In one church, they focused heavily on building villages and health facilities in Haiti. In another, it was starting up a food pantry. And in the third, the church's committee for the common good focused on raising environmental awareness, sheltering the homeless, and advocating for the many undocumented immigrants in the area. We've learned through our experiences that it is important when dealing with volunteers to be guided by where the energy of the group takes them in responding to the Just Faith programs and what they have experienced. The richness of this is certainly seen in the creativity and effectiveness of the 3 finalist organizations recognized this evening.
At some point early on in our facilitating experience, when we got to know the wonderful JFM staff and began to volunteer in marketing the programs in our area, we wondered just who was paying to keep the ministry going, because the registration fees certainly weren't enough to keep the lights on, pay the staff, and provide all the materials. We had typically paid the registration fee for the programs we facilitated, but we realized we needed to do more to support Just Faith financially through donations. When we started to ask ourselves just how much is enough to honor and support an organization that has impacted so much of our lives and the communities around us, it was and remains a very challenging question. But we believe it's a very important question for all of us who have been through a Just Faith program to ask ourselves, and we ask you to do so. We're living in a time of fear and uncertainty, as Dr. Brogdon so eloquently articulated. We personally worry a lot about the country and the world our grandchildren will inherit. Susie, Jack, and the rest of the inspiring, I get choked up whenever I talk about the staff down there. I just love them so much. Susie, Jack, and the rest of the inspiring Just Faith ministry staff are providing a source of light in communities around the country that gives us great hope that the land our grandchildren's inherit can in fact be much better than today. Through your continued donations, you can help ensure this light continues to shine brightly for many years to come. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
And thank you, Ron and Linda. Thanks for walking the talk and I guess talking the walk. Your support and encouragement inspire us. As we finish this evening, let me just offer some thanks. First, let me thank again Dr. Lewis Brogdon, whose words and partnership have been a guiding light for Just Faith over the last several years. I thank Mary Becker, whose love has washed over us for decades. I thank our winning organizations whose work inspires. I thank Susie and her wise leadership. And I thank all of you for being here, for the work that you do, for the love that you share. You fill us up. So good night, everyone. And may God bless this fragile, wondrous world that we live in. Good night.